I love science. I love knowing how things happen, where they come from, and why they change. But after spending 13 years in the United States Air Force as a weather forecaster, I've learned that there are some storms that you just can't predict. Very beginning of 2011, I went to the doctor. I asked him to do some blood work. I told him that something was going wrong. And I would say 3 to 4 days after that, he called me into his office and told me to sit down. And he handed me a piece of paper and it said, "You have polymyositis." I had no idea how to pronounce it. I had never heard it before. He looked at me and he said, "Well, looks like this might end your Air Force career." But since I was in Guam, the medical resources there were minimal. So a couple days after that, they flew me to Hawaii, where I saw our rheumatologist. He noticed a few things on my skin. My knuckles were a little bit red. And he said, "Well, that's not polymyositis, that's dermatomyositis." And they were pretty certain that this might end your Air Force career. Emily and I were getting ready to leave Guam to our next duty station in Tucson, Arizona. Little did I know that while I was in Hawaii, she had a miscarriage. Everything was really hectic. I would still be in denial about it. I didn't know what to expect. In the spring of 2012, the Air Force decided that I was no longer fit to serve. I was scared. I didn't know exactly what I was going to do once I got out. I wanted to continue serving, but I was not able to. Where were we going to live? What was going to happen? We had a newborn at the time, and so there was a lot on my plate, and it started to slowly take a toll, learning how to deal with this disease, accepting my disease, the limitations that it brought to me, the extra burden that it was putting on my wife and kid. It felt like the world was crashing in on me. I decided to go back to school to get my degree, and thankfully the VA covered my tuition. And I was getting retirement from the Air Force. So financially, everything looked like it was going to work out. What was going to be an issue was my health and where it was going to take us. Wondering if in 5 years, 10 years, if I was going to be in a wheelchair, losing the ability to move my arms a little bit, what happened if I was out in public and I would fall. The acceptance part of this disease and everything that came along with it was very tough to swallow. And that caused a lot of friction in our marriage. I was a very happy-go-lucky person, very positive person, joking around all the time. And this illness kind of covered that up like a wet blanket. I wasn't as outgoing, I wasn't as cheerful. So not only was I dealing with the physical and emotional aspect of the illness, I was upset that I wasn't the same person I was. I was looking at my son running around outside throwing the baseball, and I couldn't do that. I couldn't get on the floor to wrestle. I couldn't go to the gym, play basketball anymore. A lot of what my life was about prior was taking away. My perspective of God was someone who was there. I believed in God. I had not accepted God into my life, but I knew He was most likely there was a God. My family, they are Christians. I would hear my uncle, my aunt, cousins talk about Jesus, and I would see the joy and the amazement that talking about Him brought to their lives and just having Him in their lives. And I never felt that. I was one who would say, "Prove it to me." I was a weather forecaster. I could see why things were, what caused things. Science was very big to me. I needed a reason. Just to jump in with a leap of faith and give my whole body, my whole heart to something that I wasn't really sure that was there seemed like a stretch, and I didn't want to do that. I was pretty hard-headed, and I really didn't search out answers. And I think that's why the God I Wish You Knew affected me so much. As rare as the disease is, to move to Lexington, to go to a play group, and for my wife to meet someone with the same illness as I have, that's pretty spectacular. And I don't believe that just happened by chance. Emily found out that she went to Quest, and so we tried out Quest, and I think that we immediately felt at home. We entered into a life group almost immediately, and hanging around people my age with similar backgrounds and hearing their stories, I think that put me on the right path. I was on a path. I didn't know how long the path was, but I knew I was on the right path. In August to September of 2015, there was a series called The God I Wish You Knew. And I think week 4 of that series, the Gerard family was on stage telling their story of healing and how God has touched them. I've never met the Gerard family, so if they're watching, hello. But I just want to let them know that their story touched me in a way that is undescribable. Listening to their story, I was sitting there in the audience and I felt chills. I felt just an overwhelming presence in my heart. And I think at that point in time, I knew there's something from this, and I was very open. I think after that service, I talked to Pastor Justin briefly, and he knew my situation, and he told me to think about it. And during that week, I thought about it a lot, whether it was driving to school, hanging around the house, playing with my son, laying in bed. It was always on my mind. And I knew that I was getting to the point where I couldn't take this burden much longer. I needed help. I needed Jesus. So that next Sunday, I knew I was ready, and I gave my life to Christ. And immediately I felt at ease. I felt this huge burden was lifted off my chest, my shoulders. The worry about my future, as far as the illness goes, is still there, but I know that God is with me. He's been there during this entire journey. Whether I knew it or not, whether I saw the signs, whether I accepted it or not, it's been a real privilege and a real honor to get to this point. And I look forward to the rest of my life.